The moment you bend over backward to make everyone around you comfortable, you have already signed your own eviction notice from respect. Picture it. You say yes to a request that inconveniences your entire week. You laugh at a joke that disrespects your boundaries just to keep the peace. You swallow your anger when someone cuts you off in a meeting. You feel that familiar tightness in your chest, the quiet resentment brewing in your gut. Your brain screams that if you just show enough goodwill, if you just prove how agreeable, helpful, and kind you are, they will finally value you. So you accommodate, you smile, you smooth things over, you offer your time, your energy, your dignity on a silver platter. And in that exact second, you have handed them the permission to walk all over you. Because the world does not reward pure selflessness. The one who accommodates everyone is the one who commands no authority. The one who is terrified of causing friction is the one who ends up crushed under the weight of everyone else's demands. Niccolo Machiavelli understood a ruthless reality that polite society desperately tries to hide from you. He knew that an obsession with being liked is the fastest path to being discarded. The moment you prioritize being liked over being feared or respected, you surrender your frame. You become a tool in someone else's workshop. But what if you stopped? What if when the pressure to please arrives, you did the one thing that instantly freezes a manipulator in their tracks? Most people walk through their days as emotional doormats. They are governed entirely by the fear of disapproval. Someone sighs, they apologize. Someone demands, they scramble. They live in a continuous state of anxious servitude, burning their own house down to keep ungrateful people warm. It is a pathetic way to live. It is a slow, agonizing surrender of your masculine sovereignty. But there is another path, a way of operating in this world that is so emotionally insulated, so fundamentally untouchable, and so completely detached from the social approval of others that people naturally tread carefully around you. This is not about becoming a mindless tyrant. It is not about throwing petty tantrums. It is about a calculated surgical shift in your relationship to power. Today we are going to tear apart the toxic delusion of pathological niceness. We are going to examine the precise psychological mechanisms that make being overly agreeable a death sentence for your social standing, and how to replace it with a strategic detachment that turns you into a sovereign force. I am going to teach you how to command respect without raising your voice. How to make people second-guess ever taking advantage of you again. How to cultivate an icy emotional barrier that leaves manipulators helpless. But be warned, this requires you to eradicate a deeply conditioned instinct you have carried since you were a child. The instinct to make everyone happy. The desperate hunger to be seen as the nice guy. If you can destroy that hunger, you become untamable. You become dangerous. Let's begin. So why do you do it? Why do you constantly sacrifice your own time, peace, and boundaries to please people who wouldn't cross the street to spit on you if you were on fire? It starts in the nursery. Think back to when you were 5 or 6 years old. You quickly realized that when you were quiet, obedient, and pleasant, the adults smiled and handed you approval. You were rewarded for being agreeable. You were conditioned to believe that compliance equals safety and that making waves equals abandonment. The tragic mistake is that you took childhood survival tactics and tried to use them in the adult arena of power. You are walking through the corporate hierarchy, the dating landscape, and your social circles believing that being excessively nice will shield you from conflict. It does the exact opposite. In the adult world, perpetual niceness does not signal virtue. It signals total lack of leverage. When you constantly overgive and agree to everything, you are practically broadcasting to the room, "I have zero options. I have zero self-worth. Please take whatever you want from me, because I am terrified you will walk away if I say no." It smells like desperation, and humans, driven by primal hierarchy, ruthlessly exploit weakness whenever they detect it. Machiavelli famously noted that anyone who tries to act good in all circumstances will inevitably come to ruin among the vast numbers who are not good. Modern social dynamics operate on the exact same law. When you try to be universally accommodating, you are sacrificing your edge. You are trading respect for cheap, fleeting validation. You are essentially begging, "Please think I am a good person." But a master does not beg for a moral pat on the head. A sovereign individual does not negotiate their value. The moment you rush to fix other people's discomfort at your own expense, you tell them that their comfort is your duty. You become a resource to be consumed rather than a force to be reckoned with. This is the deadly trap of people-pleasing. You convince yourself that if you just help enough, forgive enough, and stay soft enough, people will reciprocate with loyalty and gratitude. When does that ever happen? Almost never, because people do not value what comes entirely free and without friction. They value what is scarce, guarded, and difficult to obtain. The first step to reclaiming your strength is realizing that being loved for being a doormat is not love at all. It is patronizing tolerance, and the day you stop tolerating being used is the day your real power begins. So what happens when you decide to introduce ice into your veins? Imagine the situation. A colleague or an acquaintance tries to dump their workload or their emotional chaos directly into your lap. "Hey, I really need you to handle this for me tonight. You're always so reliable." The old you would jump to oblige. You'd smile, say, "Sure, no problem," while silently boiling with rage, canceling your gym session, and sitting at your desk until midnight. Reactive, weak, terrified of rejection. Now imagine the detached Machiavellian stance. They hand you their crisis. You look them dead in the eyes. You do not smile. You do not scramble for an elaborate apologetic excuse. You let a full, heavy breath of silence pass between you. And then with complete, unshakable neutrality, you utter one single word. No. No frantic justification. No, "I'm so sorry, but I have this other thing." Just a clean, cold, immovable boundary. Do you know what happens in that moment? You break the spell. The average person expects you to bend because you have trained them to expect a break. When you deliver a calm, unapologetic refusal, the ground shifts beneath their feet. They will often stutter. They will try to guilt-trip you. "Wait, really?" But you always help out. You simply look at them, entirely unfazed by their shock, and say, "Not this time." You don't offer context. You don't ask for forgiveness. You allow them to sit in the awkwardness they generated. You force them to deal with their own problem. The power dynamic has entirely flipped. This is emotional sovereignty in its purest form. When you remove your warmth from people who only seek to exploit it, you become an impenetrable wall. You cannot manipulate a person who is entirely comfortable with being disliked. By refusing to soften your stance with performative politeness, you force them to realize that access to you has terms, conditions, and strict limits. This requires immense emotional discipline, because your internal conditioning will scream, "Smooth it over, apologize so they don't get mad at you." You must crush that voice. Machiavelli recognized that an unpredictable, impenetrable sovereign commands far more authority than an open book. When you are perpetually nice, your emotional state is completely predictable. You are an open target. When you pull back your emotional investment and adopt a cool, unreadable demeanor, you become an enigma. Silence and brevity reveal zero vulnerabilities. They create an unsettling mirror where the manipulator's entitlement has nothing to latch on to. Sometimes mere refusal is not enough. Sometimes people will deliberately attempt to bait you with passive-aggressive digs, subtle disrespect, or thinly veiled insults designed to break your composure. In dark psychology, this is known as a compliance test. They want to see if they can force an emotional reaction out of you. If you get visibly angry, you lose. If you laugh nervously and brush it off, you lose. Instead, you employ the art of absolute emotional detachment. You treat their aggression as entirely irrelevant noise. Imagine someone drops a condescending comment at a gathering. Must be nice to have so much free time while the rest of us are actually grinding. The nice guy stammers, "No, actually, I've been working 60 hours this week. I just happened to take an hour off." Pathetic. You just accepted their premise and placed yourself on trial. The cold, calculated response. You pause. You look at them with a look of mild, distant curiosity, as if observing an unusual insect on a sidewalk. Then you speak in a flat, monotone voice. Are you finished? Or even simpler. What an interesting thing to say out loud. You don't raise your voice. You don't display irritation. You deliver it with the chilling calm of a judge who finds the plaintiff mildly boring. Look at what you've accomplished. You refused to play the game of proving yourself. You highlighted their pettiness without descending into the mud with them. You demonstrated that their words hold zero emotional weight over your nervous system. This is called high-status apathy. It signals that you exist on a completely different psychological plane. When a street dog barks at a passing vehicle, the engine does not stop to explain its destination. The vehicle simply keeps moving. When you engage with petty attacks, you are getting out of the car to bark back at the dog. Stop getting out of the car, keep your hands on the wheel, keep your foot on the gas, and look straight ahead. Robert Greene, in the 48 Laws of Power, outlines Law 4, always say less than necessary. The more you talk, the more common you appear, and the less in control you are. People who are addicted to niceness talk entirely too much. They over-explain, they fill awkward silences, they volunteer unnecessary personal details, and they constantly narrate their thoughts to make others comfortable. This verbal diarrhea completely destroys any aura of mystery, strength, or authority. When you look at history's most formidable figures, they were masters of scarcity, a scarcity of speech, scarcity of attention, and scarcity of emotional reaction. When someone asks you an invasive or impertinent question, the nice person feels a compulsive need to answer completely. The sovereign individual understands that privacy is power. Them. Why did you split up with your ex? Or, how much money did you make on that deal? The weak man feels compelled to answer to avoid seeming rude. The cold strategist simply responds, "That's private." Or, with a quiet, unbothered smirk. Why do you ask? Notice the immediate reversal. You don't defend your right to privacy. You don't offer a nervous chuckle to soften the blow. You simply draw a line in the sand and let them feel the consequence of crossing it. When you withhold your words, people begin to lean in. They hang on what you do say because they know you do not waste breath on social pleasantries. You become an asset that must be earned, not a free sample handed out on the street corner. Let's examine the underlying architecture of relational power. In every human interaction, there is an exchange of attention and validation. The person who needs the validation the least holds all the power. The person who is constantly monitoring the room, trying to make sure no one is upset, is the emotional slave of the group. When you are pathologically nice, you are acting as everyone else's emotional concierge. You worry about their comfort, their feelings, their opinions of you. You are carrying luggage that does not belong to you. The moment you step into the cold archetype, you drop the bags. You realize with absolute clarity that other people's emotional turbulence is entirely their own responsibility. If someone is offended by your boundaries, that is their internal dysfunction to resolve. If someone is upset because you said no to an unreasonable request, their anger belongs to them. You do not rush to soothe them. You do not offer concessions to buy their peace. You let them manage their own emotions like an adult. This is not cruelty. It is fundamental psychological maturity. When you rescue people from the natural consequences of their entitlement, you train them to view you as a resource rather than an equal. When you hold your ground and let the tension hang, you teach them that your boundaries are non-negotiable. Now consider the concept of strategic withdrawal. The nice person is perpetually available. They reply to texts within 3 seconds. They answer phone calls at midnight. They show up to every event, even when exhausted, because they cannot bear the thought of letting someone down. This constant availability instantly depreciates your social value. It is basic economics. That which is in limitless supply carries zero price. When you make yourself completely accessible, you make yourself completely disposable. Look at how high-value individuals operate. They are selectively unavailable. They do not jump when prompted. They do not treat every notification as an emergency. They protect their focus, their solitude, and their calendar with ruthless discipline. If you want to shift the dynamic in your relationships immediately, start practicing the discipline of absence. Do not reply instantly. Do not attend every gathering. Do not offer unsolicited help. Let people wonder where you are. Let them experience the coldness of your absence so they can learn to truly appreciate the value of your presence. Machiavelli warned that excessive familiarity breeds contempt. When you are always there, always smiling, always willing to lend a hand, people stop seeing you as a human being with boundaries and begin treating you like background furniture. When you withdraw your warmth and introduce a deliberate, calm distance, you instantly restore the dignity and respect that your excessive niceness eroded. None of this functions if it is merely an act. If you adopt these behaviors on the outside, while your insides are trembling with anxiety, people will smell the deceit. Dark psychology is not about memorizing clever one-liners. It is about building an internal core of iron. You have to genuinely let go of the need to be liked. This requires deep shadow work. Why are you so terrified of someone being angry with you? Why does someone else's disapproval make you feel like your world is ending? Because you have tethered your identity to external validation. You are outsourcing your self-worth to the opinions of deeply flawed, transient people. The moment you realize that most people's opinions are fickle, shallow, and dictated entirely by their own immediate self-interest, their praise becomes meaningless, and their criticism becomes laughable. When you accept that you do not need the approval of the crowd to exist, to thrive, and to dominate your path, the fear of conflict evaporates. You no longer smile when you don't feel like smiling. You no longer agree with nonsense just to avoid an argument. You become grounded in your own truth. You become immune to emotional blackmail. You become truly sovereign. So here is the assignment. For the next 7 days, you are going to execute a complete emotional audit of your life. The protocol is simple. Absolute elimination of performative niceness. For 1 week, you are forbidden from apologizing for things that are not your fault. If someone bumps into you in the hallway, you do not say, sorry. You maintain your posture and walk forward. If someone asks you to do something that violates your time or principles, you will say, I am not available for that, with zero extra excuses. You will stop smiling out of nervous politeness. You will speak at a measured, unhurried pace. You will hold eye contact without flinching. You will let awkward silences sit in conversations without rushing to fill them. Watch what begins to happen in your environment. Watch the initial shock from those who were accustomed to using you as an emotional dumping ground. Watch how people suddenly adjust their tone, treat your time with caution, and begin speaking to you with genuine respect. You will feel an intense urge to slip back into your old habits, to apologize, to soften the edges, to play the harmless nice guy. Stifle that urge. Let that weak, subservient version of you die. You are reclaiming your sovereignty. You are stepping out of the role of the pleaser and into the role of the commander. The world belongs to those who have the courage to be cold when strength is required. Keep your boundaries. Keep your discipline. Keep your power.